All right, so again, thank you for coming out tonight. We are going to focus on iReady. iReady is our new math curriculum. So many parents think of iReady and they hear their kids talk about an iReady diagnostic, but iReady is actually a comprehensive math curriculum that includes what they're doing in the classroom, as well as some things that they can do outside of the classroom and that teachers can use in small group as well. So it's not just a test. There's a lot more to iReady that we're going to dig into tonight. So for tonight's agenda, we are going to talk about what iReady Classroom Mathematics is. We will talk about what that diagnostic assessment is, how to read the diagnostic report so that you can dig into how your individual child is doing and progressing throughout the year. This year, because it's new, but eventually you'll be able to see that progress over time. We'll talk about how staff use that iReady data. And in that, we'll talk a little bit about how that data will also be woven into our accelerated math placement down the road. We'll talk about how you can support your students' math learning at home, as well as resources that are available from iReady that you can access. And then obviously time for questions at the end. But we are a small group, so if you have any questions along the way, as I said earlier, make sure to enter those in the chat and we'll try to address them as they come up. So as I said, iReady Classroom Mathematics is a full-blown curriculum. It is standards aligned. The instruction for iReady does follow what they call a try, discuss, and connect framework. So oftentimes the students are being exposed to a question that they haven't learned how to solve yet, to get their minds thinking, discussing with their classmates, challenging them a little bit, pushing them outside their comfort zone, and then they discuss that as a class and connect it to then their learning. So that try, discuss, connect framework you're going to see come up in many of the pages that come home with your student if they're bringing them home. But if you, at the end of the year, if the workbook comes home, you can look at it there too. But many of the pages will follow that model. So this year, we're really focusing on getting kids talking about math, that productive struggle through math, being okay outside of their comfort zone a little bit. And then obviously the teacher brings them back together, connects all of that discussion that they've done with their small group or with their classmates to connect that to the learning that they will do with new content. So really big on those discussion pieces this year in the math curriculum. At the start of each unit, at the start of each lesson, you will get a family letter. So some teachers send this out just as you see in that picture. It's tore out of their workbook and it goes home. Some teachers will take components of it and put it in their parent square messages. But I just wanted to clarify, when it says a lesson on there, in iReady, a lesson refers to roughly about a week and a half of instruction. So I know when I was a student, and even when I started teaching, a lesson was really something I did during a 45-minute, hour-long period. And then the next day would be a new lesson. But through iReady, a lesson is something that spans over the course of a week and a half. And then sessions are the reference for what we do on a daily basis in math class. So when you see these family letters and it's for a specific lesson, they are pertaining to a longer period of time, a week and a half, based on what the students are working on. So you should see these pretty regularly, but they aren't going to come home every day. And again, they might come home electronically, and some of them might be just in the student's folder. So just something to think about. The other thing I wanted to point out in these family letters that introduce each of the lessons is right here. I think you can see my cursor moving. It does show you some learning games, which we'll talk about what those are, but they're learning games that are specific to this lesson. So as I talk later about what learning games are, these family letters can help direct you to a specific game that will help your student in the content that they're currently learning. There will be a plethora of learning games available, but this kind of helps you narrow down that for you. And then the other piece that's on here says math tools. So we'll talk a little bit about that at a later time tonight too. So if you're doing assignment at home, we're talking through math, there are some electronic math tools or math manipulatives that the students could access because they typically at school have those items in their hands when they're trying to solve. So they have electronic versions of those that you can use at home as well, so that they can show you those pieces. So those are all things that are part of this family letter that are really just meant to give you as a parent information about what's coming up, what they're going to be learning about, and then there's always a family activity that goes along with the concept that students should be able to do based on that skill, but from the year prior. So it should be something that they can do with you without needing to learn the new lesson or material. So we encourage you to do that activity at home just to kind of get them talking and thinking math ahead of the lesson starting. As I said, that family letter was in the workbook. The workbook also has different colored pages. So the blue pages, you'll see these blue headers. Those are pages that they typically will do as a whole class in a whole group setting together. They're walking through the problem. Like I said, that try, discuss, connect. They'll work with a small group or a partner. They'll discuss it as a class, and then together they are connecting that to what their actual learning is for the day. And then they advance to those green pages, which really are meant to be independent or small group. So they might be doing it with a group of students. They might be doing it in a small group with a teacher at the back table, or they're doing it independently. So it's kind of that gradual release. We do it together as a class, and then they try it in a small group or on their own. Some parents don't ever see the workbook pages because they are done at school typically. But if you're ever curious about it or want to see what the students have done, they can be ripped out of the workbook and sent home. We just don't like to send the entire workbook home because then they won't have it the next day. Some things get lost in translation or transition between home and school. So we don't like to send the workbook home, but we could send pages if you wanted to request that. Other components of iReady are electronic. So the workbook is typically what they're doing for the majority of the math lesson, but there are some electronic components. So on the home screen, when they log in through their Launchpad and go to their iReady button on the Launchpad, they will open up to this home screen, and on there is their MyPath lesson. Their MyPath is a personalized learning system that is assigned directly to them based on what their individual needs are. And as I said, we're going to talk about that diagnostic test. How they do on that test determines what MyPath looks like for them. So every child's is different. You know, some kids are working at grade level, some kids are working above grade level, others are below grade level. The goal for every student is to work in MyPath for 40 to 50 minutes per week. Typically about 10 minutes a day, the teachers are asking students to get on their MyPath and complete that. And it should be completed during time at school. The iReady trainers that have been working with our staff do discourage families from using the MyPath system for longer than 50 minutes a week. So some kids do really love it, and they get home and they want to keep working on it. They do discourage that because there is a fear of burnout. They want the MyPath to remain engaging and fun. And if it's pushed on a student and they spend too much time on it, there has been some burnout, as well as in their research that they've done, they noticed that after that 50-minute mark, the growth tends to plateau a little bit, and the benefits are no longer as beneficial to them the longer they're on it. So they see, consistent, steady growth up to 50 minutes, and then after that, it kind of plateaus. So I just took some screenshots so you can see it is very kid friendly. It is more like gamified learning, but it is at their level, and it is giving them some instruction that goes along with it. So it's not just a game. It does tell them if they're getting it incorrect, and it will tell them at the end if they passed that lesson or not. And the teacher gets that feedback as well. The teacher can see if they passed, what percentage they passed, and if they need extra support from the teacher before they move on to their next lesson. So all of that is provided to the teacher on the back side. And again, our goal is just 10 minutes a day in the classroom. So it's not a big chunk of their time here at school, but it is what research has shown to be most effective. So that's the MyPath. Another link that they have on that home screen is learning games. So I pointed out learning games on that family letter. Every student has a variety of learning games, and those learning games are adjusted based on how they did on the diagnostic test. So again, they may all have the same games, but the level in which the questioning is in that game is matched to where they're at as an individual student. The program does not put a cap on how long they should be on learning games. This is not a requirement of our teachers that they have to spend a certain amount of time on learning games. So this is an area where at home, if you are, you pick your battle. Do I want them on technology? Do I not? If they are going to be on technology, they could be doing something beneficial with their time. These learning games could be something that they utilize that does align with where they're at academically. And then, like I said, on that family letter, it does actually pinpoint which game is most aligned to the current lesson. So that's helpful for you as well. The next piece that is here is fluency flight. So during parent-teacher conferences, your child's teacher may have talked to you a little bit about fluency flight. This is also a game format, and this is one that teachers are asked to have their students do 4 times a week. The program does not let them exceed 4 times a week. So some students have tried to do it on the weekend. It doesn't give them the option to play it. So they're limited to 4 times a week, and it's roughly 8 to 10 minutes a day. And this one is solely on automaticity of their facts. So for those of you that have been around for a little bit, if you were familiar with spring math last year or years prior, this replaced spring math. If you've been along for a long time, we did rocket math. And this, again, is a replacement of rocket math. So it's practicing, depending on grade level. They're adding, subtracting facts. Are they being fluent and quick with it? Multiplication, division facts. Are they doing it fluently? So that is something that's why it should only take them 8 minutes to finish, maybe 10. But if they're taking longer than that, then they aren't being fluent with their facts, and that's what we need to work on. So at home, although you can't really get them on fluency flight because they're limited, working on those math facts, and we'll talk about that a little later when we say, what can you do at home to help? Working on those math facts will truly be beneficial for them, not just to be successful on fluency flight, but really just overall in their math academic as they progress through the grade levels. All right, and then the other component that is available electronically, some teachers use this more than others and some never do, but there is an option for teacher assigned lessons. So that is different than MyPath. Teacher assigned is, I want every student in the class to do an assignment on this topic that we're currently working on together, or I want this small group of 5 kids to work on this topic. So it is not linked to their diagnostic or any individual progress. It's what the teacher is saying they need at that moment. So oftentimes that is used, like if the teacher is doing small group work with another group of students, they might have the rest of the class working on a teacher assigned lesson electronically, or it might be a part of a rotation that they're doing in their classroom. So that is more based on what the teacher thinks they need and not necessarily what one assessment is telling them. So that is really what is available in the software, whether it be electronically or through the workbook, what iReady consists of. So there are many components to what that is. And I guess I'll pause there before I dive into what the diagnostic is and how it gives us that data to help us drive our instruction. So does anybody have any questions about the pieces of iReady? Feel free to put them in the chat. And give me a second. All right. Well, if you change your mind and want to type something in, feel free. We can always come back to those. But the next piece is, what is the iReady diagnostic? So if you are, again, have been around for a while, we used to give the NWEA MAP assessment 3 times a year, fall, winter, spring, for both math and reading. When iReady was adopted as our curriculum and it had a diagnostic already in it, we opted to forego our MAP assessment for math and instead do the iReady diagnostic. So this is something that they still take 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring. It does measure multiple different domains of math, very similar to what the MAP test did. It is adaptive, meaning that if a student gets the question correct at grade level, then the next question might be a little bit harder and a little bit harder and a little bit harder until it levels out to really know where the students are at academically. And the opposite, if they are doing poorly on those grade level questions, it will adapt down and continue to adapt down until it levels out and students start to get it correct. So if your students like, some of the questions were so hard, that's because it's trying to adjust to see what is just right for your child. So it does adjust to their needs. We stress to the kids, it is not a grade, it is not timed, it's really nothing that they can study for. We just, as teachers and educators, we want to know what they know. And if they don't know it, that's okay. They don't know it yet. That's what our teachers are here for, and we can help them close those gaps or to continue learning based on what the data is showing us. So really, growth over time matters more than just an overall score. But we use the data from this for quite a bit here at school. I think I already hit on all of those pieces. But it really, I think the biggest piece out of this slide here is we want to know what they're ready to learn next. So this assessment tells us what they know, and then it does give us good data of what would be that next level we need to take the student to. What are they ready to learn next? The other piece I'll say about the iReady diagnostic for math is that the questions they do have the option to listen to the questions. So we're trying to take that reading element out, and we really get to see what do they know mathematically. So the questions are read to them if they choose to select the little speaker button and have it read to them. If they get to a question and the speaker button is not there, that means they've exceeded 5th grade standards and are working on a question that would be 6th grade level. So obviously the younger kids maybe will not see that, but when you start to get to 4th and 5th grade, they may start seeing some questions that are at that 6th grade level, and that speaker button does go away once the questions become middle school level. So that is something that has come up. A student is like, why can't I have it read? And that's typically why they go away. So the read to option goes away at 6th grade. So in terms of reading the diagnostic report, I know an email was sent out with some instructions for how to access that report. If you have not done that yet, that's okay. But it is available at any time to you through your student's account. So you do have to have their computer, and they have to log into their iReady account. They can then navigate to that For Families button. It's up in the top right-hand corner. And when they click on that, then there's a family report option. And this, I know it's tiny, but this is a screenshot of what one of those reports looks like. The main piece that a lot of people look at is just this, that green bar and those blue bars. The green, once you have your individual child's report, that green is showing you what is considered grade level. So if a student is on grade level, they are somewhere in that green. At the beginning of the year, they're probably closer to the bottom of green. And at the end of the year, we want them closer to the top of green, because iReady does talk about like beginning of third grade, middle of third grade, end of third grade, when they're assigning how well a student did on their assessment. So green is grade level. Blue, those vertical bars are showing you, this example is showing you that in the fall, their blue bar was slightly below grade level, and in the winter, their blue bar was at the beginning of grade level material. So you can look at it in that image on the report from there. This box off to the side does tell you a breakdown of some of those subcategories and how they're doing, because sometimes students do really well in number sense, but maybe not so well in geometry. So you can see where their skill deficits or where they excel in some of those subcategories right to the right of those green and blue bars. So that just gives you a little bit better picture overall of your student in some of those subcategories for math. And then at the bottom here, it says F on the picture. That does tell you some additional strategies that you can use at home to help your child based on where they're falling on the diagnostic assessment. On this slide, I do have the district report code. So that GVTVPS, I did put that in the information I sent out about the report, but you do have to have that code in order to access that report from your student's account. The other thing I was going to point out about the scores, because some parents, and really, to be honest, some of our teachers at the start of the year when this was all new to us, let's say a student is in 4th grade and they take that assessment in the fall and all of their scores are showing up as 3rd grade, and they're like, my whole class is performing below grade level. They're all performing in as a 3rd grader, but we're in 4th grade. The way that iReady, our trainers have told us, is that when you're taking it in the fall, first week of September, they truly are 3rd grade students, even though they're in 4th grade, because they have not really been exposed to 4th grade curriculum yet. So in the fall, they should, on grade level, it would be that grade level before, but by the time they're at like this time of year, winter, they should be at mid 4th grade for that 4th grade student. So if they're performing the grade level below in the fall, that is typical because they are brand new to the next grade level. And then as that instruction happens, they say that that bar should start to go up closer to middle, and then by the end of the year, the top side of green, if they're on grade level. So that is a typical progress for a student. So sometimes that does concern a parent at the beginning of the year, but you should see that growth over time. All right, so how do staff use that data from the diagnostic test? Because I hear occasionally, like, are we over testing the kids? Do they really need to take these diagnostics or these MAP assessments? So when we get the data for each of those tests, staff have the ability to look at their classroom data, and the program does group students. So obviously I don't have names on here, but you can see in group 1 there are 2 students, group 2 7 students, 0, 5, and so on. It takes students that are performing similarly in similar content area within math and groups them together, and then tells our teachers that if the student is in group 1, they need more work on, let's say, geometry. If they're in group 2, they need more work on, and they give them a breakdown of where their focus area needs to be. So when a teacher is pulling their small groups, they are pulling them strategically based on what the data is telling us about the students. Now, data is great, and Ms. Leffelman will know that I love data, but teachers do also look at this and say, you know, I don't know that this always accurately reflects a student, so they have their own personal autonomy to adjust the groupings, but the program does at least offer us some information based on what we know about the student at the moment that they took the test. The other thing that the diagnostic gives us is a prerequisite report by unit of instruction. So remember, a lesson is a week, week and a half. A unit is usually about 4 lessons, or 4 to 6 lessons make up a full unit. So the diagnostic assessment will look at each unit, and it will tell our teachers what prerequisite skills certain groups of students need in order to be successful in the upcoming unit. So this is, again, just a random sample, but you can see 4 students are green in this group A. They really don't have much to work on. These 26, I think it says, students are red. There's going to be a lot more prerequisite skill work that they need to do in order to be able to be successful in the current unit. So before we jump into the new unit, the teacher has data to say, you know, maybe a large chunk of your class isn't ready yet. Look back at some of these skills they should have learned the previous year, aren't quite mastered, so we're going to focus on those moving forward. So that data is helpful for the unit. And then it also will break it down by individual skills. So here you'll see in this example, it's even told us what the priority skill is. So within this lesson, this write and interpret numeric expressions is the priority skill that they need to focus on. They should spend most of their time filling those gaps to help overall success as the lesson and unit continues. The other thing I wanted to say about the iReady data, and I didn't put it in here initially, but I have since sent some information out to 3rd grade families and 5th grade families. So starting next school year, we are going to be offering an accelerated math class for students in 4th grade. And then the following year, we will do the same for the students in 5th grade. So next year, it's just for 4th grade, and then it will roll up the following year for 5th grade. And then middle school will take over. Middle school has already a compacted math program, which is an accelerated math program. So instead of waiting till 6th grade, we'll start that sooner. So Mrs. Leffelman, I'll come to you in just a second for that question. So the iReady diagnostic data is a component of what is required as part of that entrance criteria. So it's not that they have to necessarily have a certain score, but a certain range of a score gives them a certain number of points, and it's a rubric style system to get into that accelerated math. So that iReady diagnostic is just one component. And if you're a 3rd grade or 5th grade parent, you saw my letter, we're also giving the COGAT test, which is another component. So that it's not just a one assessment we're looking at, but I just wanted to point out that the diagnostic is a component of that placement criteria. All right, Ms. Levelman, you got a question for me?
There is a question on the chat. It says, if groups are created based on iReady scores, then are they separated to teach those gaps?
So yes, as we talked about earlier, some of those pages are done for whole class and others are done in small group setting. So if they're in a group and they're behind, when that teacher pulls them for small group, then they are working on something more specific to the needs of that group rather than in the whole class. The other component of that, we have a period in our day called Elevate, and many of the grade levels during Elevate will look across the grade level, and all of the students that are performing in a, let's say, a group 4 in each of the 5 sections of 4th grade might all be pulled to one teacher to work on those skills that they need during that Elevate time. So our Elevate twice a week is math focused, and the other 2 days are ELA focused, and then on our 5th day is our zones of regulation SEL day. So twice a week, they are getting individualized instruction based on these groupings. So yes, in the classroom in small group, and yes, in that Elevate time as well. Did that answer everything?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. All right, so how can you help support math learning at home? So I have a list here, but then I do have some screenshots of what that would look like from the kids' computer as well. So talking about the My Progress Tracker, and I'm going to flip to that now. So again, we talked about this home screen, and I have a lot of things circled because that's what I want to talk about. The biggest piece is making sure they're clicked on math. So in this bubble up here, it shows math and reading. This year, our focus is only on math in iReady, but we do have some teachers piloting the reading option. So some students do go into the reading program and do MyPath for reading as well, but making sure if you're wanting to hone in on math skills that they are logged in as math instead of reading. So that's first. But that My Progress Tracker, it's right here at the bottom of their home screen. So that is something that I would strongly suggest you review with your student. And when you look at their My Progress Tracker, this is what it looks like on their screen. It's going to show you the time on task. Again, our goal is 40 to 50 minutes. So if we're 4 days into the week and they only have 24 minutes, you can have a conversation with them about whether or not they're using their class time wisely. Are they focusing on what they're supposed to? I know my daughter was out of school sick last week for a couple days, and her school uses iReady as well. So when she was on the couch and she was bored, I said, you're missing your iReady MyPath time. Do you want to do a few minutes of it? So she was able to do that when she was at home sick. Spring break, winter break, those types of breaks when we aren't doing it in the classroom, you're welcome to encourage that at home too, just to keep them active in math. But that My Progress Tracker, it's going to give you the minutes that they logged, but more importantly, the lessons that they passed. Because if they're logging 100 minutes, but they're not passing their lessons, then they're really not getting out of it what they need to be. So really looking at both of those components on their progress to make sure that they're actually paying attention and aren't just logged in and clicking. because it's fun to watch the characters move across the screen. So the lessons passed is the important piece. And then you can see here, this screenshot doesn't have anything but a lesson streak. So how many did they pass in a row over the course of a week? You could see that as well. And then on the bottom here, completed work. If you were to click on the completed work, you can actually see what lessons they were. So what was the name of the lesson and how they did on each individual lesson. So not just that they passed it, but what was their score if they passed. So this screenshot of this student, they did really well. They passed 100% on all of their lessons. So those 4 components of the My Progress Tracker are things that at least give you some insight at home of what have they been working on. It gives you a conversation starter if they are having a lot of minutes but not passing lessons. Again, another topic to talk about. And one of the resources I linked at the end is actually a tracker that you and your kids could make. Like if you set a goal for them, they could color it in at home and kind of watch along with you to give them some motivation there. So those were the pieces with the My Progress Tracker. The tools button down here, that's what I talked about at the very beginning, was those math manipulatives. So if they're using tens frames or a ruler or a compass or any type of math manipulative, they would have a virtual version of that here. And then also on the bottom here are the learning games. So we talked about those learning games that can be used at home. That at any time, there's not a time limit cap on those. That can also be accessed from this page. So I'm just circling back to this to make sure I didn't miss anything, but the My Progress Tracker we talked about on breaks from school. So we talked about spring break, winter break. They can do their My Path minutes, again, sticking to that 40 to 50 minutes. If they're homesick from school, they're welcome to make up what they would have done that 10 minutes a day at home. The learning games we talked about, and then the tools that they can use to help them with their homework, or if they want to show you something using the tools, that is helpful too. Mrs. Leffelman, you have a question for me?
There's another question. They want to know, are there sample or practice tests that are available for home use?
Sample diagnostic tests? Is that what we're referring to, or? Not sure. I would say the closest thing to, so the short answer is no, there's not a sample diagnostic, but the more work, sample school tests. Okay. The more work that they do on their My Path, if they're passing those lessons, that's just going to help that carry over onto their future diagnostic assessments. In terms of sample school tests, the system, like on the teacher's end, they do offer like a test version A and a test version B, and the teachers give one of those tests as the test for the class. You can ask the teacher if they're willing to give that other one as a sample. Some teachers do the other one together in class as like practice before, kind of like the old version of a study guide. So that's available to the teacher. It's just not something that's out for everybody anytime, but it's definitely something you could ask the teacher if they're willing to share, if they're not using it, in their class as a resource as well. All right, I linked in here some resources The first one's just a video overview. I did talk a lot about everything that would be on that video, but if you're ever want to hear from an iReady person, there's a video overview of the whole iReady program. The data tracker, that's the one I was mentioning, like that My Progress, the minutes they've done and the lessons they've passed each day or each week. They have trackers that you could use at home for parents, so you could keep it on your fridge. They could color in as they complete their minutes or as they pass their lessons. So that's just an easy one-page printout that you could use. Daily reflections, they have, it's 3 or 4 different versions of a reflection. Obviously, they advance based on their age. It's really just a question thing that you could be asking the kids about what they learned, what they struggled with. There's just various different reflection questions specific to their math lesson that just helps kind of get you started engaging with them on a conversation. Because as I said, I have a daughter who uses iReady at her school, and I'll often ask, what does she learn today? And she's like, I don't know, math, which isn't very helpful. But if I dig in with more strategic questions, I get more out of her. So that does help with some of the questioning. And then really just any question a parent might have, there's a family center that has like FAQ page and a bunch of resources for families to pull from. So that is linked there as well. All right, that was a lot of information, hopefully helpful. But if you have any questions pertaining to iReady that you want to ask about, or pertaining to the accelerated math I talked about a little bit, I'll hang on for a little bit to ask any questions. If you don't have questions, you don't have to feel obligated to stay on. You're welcome to sign off, but if you want to stick around, if there are people that have questions, we can do that as well. I think I just saw that, Ms. Leffelman, the current 4th grade students, when will they take the COGAT? So the current 4th grade, unfortunately, are going to be in the group that won't have access to accelerated math until middle school, which is really what we've been doing with all of our students so far. So they will take the COGAT. They're around this time of year in their 5th grade year. So they'll take it in 5th grade in preparation for placement in 6th grade, whether it be accelerated or regular. All right.